Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tearing through some really fascinating source material and strapping in for what might just be the single most calculated risk in Hollywood for the next few years.
It's a big one.
It really is. We are talking about Netflix, C.S. Lewis, and the just massive, almost unbelievable hype surrounding their reboot of the Chronicles of Narnia. So our mission today is to really dissect this fascinating convergence point in modern Hollywood. Because this isn't just about a new movie. It's about Netflix's, well, desperate multi-billion-dollar quest for a definitive fantasy saga.
One that can actually rival the major studios.
Exactly. And they're trying to launch it with this really controversial, high-stakes, theatrical release strategy that's tied exclusively to IMAX. And we have some, truly astonishing quotes from the top of IMAX that we really need to get into.
Yeah, and the stakes here just could not be higher. That's, really important context for you to have right from the start. Netflix has been looking for this kind of tentpole saga for years. They've invested so heavily, mainly in TV adaptations, trying to build these huge universes out of titles like The Witcher and Shadow and Bone.
And the general feeling is that those efforts just haven't quite yielded the results that the streamer was hoping for.
It's putting it mildly. The source material is pretty clear that neither of those worked out as the streamer would have hoped. The Witcher has had all sorts of expensive production issues, showrunner changes.
Right.
And Shadow and Bone, despite having 2 seasons, just got canceled. They need a win, a big one that can guarantee them, like, a decade of content.
So this Narnia project, which is slated for 2026, it's everything for them.
It is absolutely crucial. It's their attempt to finally solidify their place in the blockbuster game. And they're using an IP that already has, massive global recognition.
Okay, so let's unpack the creative starting point, because that's where all this confidence is supposedly coming from. Greta Gerwig. Her name alone just completely shifts the conversation from, oh, another reboot, to, okay, this is an event.
It absolutely does. Gerwig's involvement here is kind of the insurance policy. The analysis we have highlights exactly why she's seen as the perfect fit. She checks all these critical boxes that, well, the previous Disney and Fox attempts just didn't.
And those fizzled out after 3 movies, right?
Exactly. So we're talking about her proven ability to handle truly massive budgets, check. Expertise in adapting classic literature, big check. And this knack for making these complex, multi-layered stories feel accessible but still keep their depth.
And that last point is so vital, because Lewis's Narnia can be heavily allegorical. It's almost didactic at times.
And Gerwig has proven she can navigate that exact kind of challenge. Just think about Little Women. She took this classic, sometimes kind of saccharine text and just infused it with modern narrative energy.
Made it feel relevant.
Totally. Relevant and emotionally complex. And the source material suggests she's going to do the exact same thing here. Take some of the more dated aspects of Lewis and make the core themes really resonate for a 21st century audience.
That attention to complexity brings us right to their big structural decision. And this, to me, is the key indicator that they're aiming for something, darker and way more ambitious than what we've seen before.
Yes. For those of you who know the books, this decision is absolutely crucial. The first movie they're making is The Magician's Nephew.
Okay.
The source clarifies that this is, quote, chronologically the first in the series, though it was the 6th to be published. The previous adaptations, like that 2005 Disney film, they all started with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Right, the most famous one, the one everyone knows.
The most familiar story.
So why the switch? Why start with The Magician's Nephew? What's the thematic payoff for making that choice?
It just changes the entire focus of the franchise from the get-go. The Magician's Nephew is foundational. It's the creation myth of Narnia.
The origin story.
Exactly. The birth of Aslan, the entrance of evil into this new world, the creation of the famous wardrobe. And crucially, it shifts the focus away from the Pevensey siblings who, they dominate the more famous middle books.
So you're saying they're telling a story about cosmic origin and responsibility, not just a simple kids stumble into a magical land adventure.
Precisely. It lets them lean right into the complex, sometimes challenging philosophical ideas that Lewis built into the mythology. It sets a much grander, more serious 7-film scope right from the very start.
And that ambition tells us that Netflix is serious about building this thing out completely.
Oh, yeah. Gerwig was initially reported to direct 2 films, but you've got 7 books there. The long-term potential for a true cinematic universe is enormous, assuming this first one lands.
Which makes perfect sense. The creation story validates the need for a 7-part saga. Okay, now let's talk about the fuel being poured on this fire. Because the hype around this project isn't just your standard studio PR. It's coming directly from their biggest theatrical partner, IMAX.
Right.
So this past December, during IMAX's Investors Day, the CEO, Rich Gelfond, he dropped some truly extraordinary quotes. They go way beyond standard promotion.
He was definitely not being subtle. I mean, he was talking to his shareholders, so he's projecting maximum confidence.
I have to stop you there. Because yes, shareholders need confidence, but the language Gelfond used here, it feels like pure corporate hyperbole. I need to quote this directly.
Okay.
He said this new Narnia reboot would be a cultural event.
A cultural event. Wow.
And that it would get this change the world.
Change the world. That's a bold claim for a movie.
And he also explicitly called it a real blockbuster movie.
It is aggressive language, yeah.
Yeah.
But if we analyze the strategy behind it, it's not just baseless cheerleading. Gelfond is making a very clear assertion here, one that's designed to instill confidence in the theater industry.
Or at least the IMAX part of it.
Well, exactly. He specifically said that Greta Gerwig is making this movie for IMAX. He claims she fully understands the scale and format that requires.
So the message is really twofold. One, this isn't going to look like some screaming movie that just happens to get a theater run.
No, this is designed for the biggest screen possible.
And two, it reinforces how crucial that partnership is for both of them.
Absolutely. IMAX is basically granting Netflix the legitimacy of a major theatrical event. Legitimacy that, other theater chains often refuse to offer because of all the distribution fights. The fact that the CEO of IMAX is willing to go out on a limb with phrases like, change the world? It just reflects the mutual strategic importance here. IMAX needs these massive, must-see cultural events to drive people to theaters.
And Netflix desperately needs the cultural validation of a true theatrical blockbuster to elevate its brand on a global scale.
Exactly.
And that validation is the perfect bridge to the most ambitious and honestly the most contentious part of this whole plan.
The release model itself.
The release model,
yeah.
This is the business strategy that could define Netflix's entire approach to the film industry moving forward.
And this is where they're really looking to disrupt the status quo. The whole history between Netflix and theater chains just makes this move incredibly tense.
Let's just lay out the precise timeline, because the numbers here are what really matter. Narnia. The Magician's Nephew is slated for release on November 26, 2026. It will debut in about 1,000 IMAX screens for a 2-week IMAX-exclusive theatrical run.
2 weeks only.
2 weeks only. And only after that run is done will it drop on Netflix, which is scheduled for about a month later, right around Christmas.
That 2-week window is the key source of all the industry friction.
Right.
To really get the tension here, you have to understand the traditional model. For decades, the big Hollywood studios have more or less stuck to a 45-day theatrical window. That means a film has to play in theaters for at least 45 days before it can go to home video or streaming.
It's all designed to protect the box office.
Exactly. And Netflix has always hated that window. They feel like it just stifles their ability to use their biggest assets on their own platform.
Sure.
Absolutely. And the sources point out that this short window has already been heavily, quote, criticized by other theater chains such as View. Netflix already has a complicated and divisive relationship with the industry because they just don't want to play by the established rules.
So this IMAX deal is essentially Netflix creating its own rules with a partner they can trust.
They're building their own system. And that lack of cooperation really feeds into these broader industry concerns, The sources mention that this is one reason the exhibition industry is so nervous about Netflix's rumored bid to buy Warner Bros.
Because if they get a major studio, they get control over its entire theatrical pipeline.
And then they could potentially dictate shorter windows across the board. The irony is just, it's so rich. Netflix needs the theatrical buzz to make Narnia a cultural event, but they're using that very theatrical run to fundamentally destabilize the model that creates that buzz.
So what if it actually works?
Well, that's the thing. If this 2-week high-intensity IMAX strategy is successful, if it generates that global buzz Gelfond is promising, it's a distribution model that could certainly be repeated.
Right.
It would give Netflix the ability to generate a quick, significant theatrical burst of revenue and massive cultural awareness without ever sacrificing their main goal, which is dominating the streaming holiday season.
It's such a pointed strategy. It's basically them saying, we will give you this spectacle, but only on our terms.
And only with the partners who are fully bought in.
Yeah. It's an active distribution disruption, but it's disguised as just another tentpole release. Okay, let's pivot back to the creative choices that are so explicitly designed to maximize that two-week buzz. Gelfand mentioned some pretty unexpected creative details.
He really did.
Things that seem intended to, I don't know, shock people and attract a really wide audience, especially people who might think of Narnia as, dated or kind of soft fantasy.
Gelfand truly hammered home this idea that the reboot is modern and edgy. He said point blank, "This is not your mother's or your grandmother's Narnia."
That's a direct declaration of war on the gentle, traditional interpretation of C.S. Lewis.
It really is.
And nothing screams, "Not your grandmother's Narnia," quite like the music choices he teased. Pink Floyd. The idea of pairing psychedelic rock with C.S. Lewis's creation myth feels almost deliberately jarring.
It does.
What's the strategic goal there?
It's directly tied to the IMAX experience. Gelfand went on to say the movie would feature unbelievably contemporary music, and then he cited examples like Pink Floyd and The Doors.
Wow.
And he specifically noted that IMAX fans appreciate this kind of powerful contemporary music paired with big visuals. It fulfills that strategic need for pure spectacle.
So the music isn't just a creative choice, it's a technical driver. It's designed to leverage the superior sound systems and the immersive visuals that only an IMAX theater can really provide.
You got it. It's about creating an aggressive sensory experience that demands to be seen on the biggest screen.
So the spectacle, the sound, the visuals, the shocking music that gets people into the IMAX theater fast.
Exactly. But the sources are careful to remind us that it's the core of the C.S. Lewis story, filtered through Gerwig's acclaimed directing style, that will ultimately drive repeat viewings, secure the sequels, and guarantee the success of that Christmas Netflix release.
And that timing, that Christmas drop, is so critical. For those of you who track streaming trends, that's what we call a major drop. It's a high-budget, high-profile title released strategically during a predictable period of maximum viewer engagement.
The holiday viewing surge. It's positioned perfectly to just dominate the global conversation right when families are home looking for something to watch. It's a move designed to own the entire holiday entertainment season. First with theatrical buzz, and then immediately by capturing the home viewing market. So if we synthesize this whole picture for you, we really have a triple threat scenario. First, you have a top-tier, critically acclaimed director, Greta Gerwig, and she's tackling one of fantasy literature's biggest challenges, making Narnia relevant again.
By starting with that complex creation mythology.
Right. Second, you have these incredibly high financial and strategic stakes for Netflix. They just desperately need a definitive multi-decade saga. And third, you have this bold, controversial distribution model.
Using that short, high-intensity IMAX window to generate enormous, concentrated buzz before pivoting straight to streaming.
It's a huge test case.
It really is. A test case for how high-budget films might be launched in the future. If this calculated risk pays off, it finally gives Netflix that fantasy universe it's been searching for, and it validates a new, disruptive way to platform their biggest films. But the question that this whole thing raises for me is this. Given the IMAX CEO's extreme confidence, that changed the world level of hyperbole, if this two-week theatrical run actually proves to be the cultural event he predicts, what happens to the traditional 45-day theatrical window? Does it just become irrelevant for the biggest blockbusters?
If 2 weeks in IMAX can drive enough buzz and revenue to satisfy the studios, maybe.
And maybe, most ironically, could Netflix, despite its contentious history with the exhibition business, become the reluctant party responsible for forcing cinematic spectacle back into theaters?
Even if it's only for a brief, glorious 2 weeks.
Just because it's the only reliable way left to launch a massive streaming hit, that's certainly something to chew on as we track this all the way to November 2026.